Hey, today on the show, we have Rachel Scheid from Coldwell Banker in Chicago in their West Loop office. Now, as branch manager of Coldwell Banker's West Loop in Chicago, Rachel provides unmatched marketing support, meaningful coaching, and personalized attention. Her main focus is to bring agents to the next level, helping them grow their business and enhance their skill set. Active within the broader real estate community, Rachel dedicates time to the Chicago Association of Realtors as a sitting member of both their foundation and their political action committee, engaging agents in ongoing legislation, education, and networking. We should also mention that Rachel is a National Association of Realtors award-winning 30 under 30 recipient. Please follow Rachel on Instagram. And Facebook. You can just search for her on Facebook. But on Instagram, it's Rachel Scheid, which is, again, RachelScheid. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for coming on, and I'm really excited to chat with you because you're like the perfect guest for our show because you spend 100% of your time talking to agents, coaching, training. You're also super involved with many different committees. You're involved at the local level, the state level, hopefully one day the national level. You're a leader. But more importantly, you've seen agents come and go. Coldwell Banker has a huge presence here in the Chicagoland area, thousands of agents. So you have a good sense of what's working these days and what isn't. But I would love to go all the way back to the beginning because I know you started very early in your career in real estate. And do you mind sharing sort of how you got into real estate?
Sure. So I was actually 21 at the time, and I was working for a souvenir photography company. You know, those people at Navy Pier who ask to take your picture and sell it to you later. That was me in college. And I relocated to Philadelphia for that company. And one of my best friend's mothers is a top producer out of the North Shore markets. And she was looking for someone to come be her assistant who would get licensed. She knew I wanted to come back to Chicago, so I was her first call. So without knowing really anything about real estate, I packed my bags, moved back to Chicago, and I was her licensed assistant for 2 years in the North Shore market. And then I was recruited by a team, which I joined and was sort of kind of their buyer's agent, but more their city agent while they handled the North Shore and those burbs up there. I was on the team for 3 years. Then I went solo for a year, doubled my business my first year off the team, which was amazing.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, and not an easy feat, but I think you're just capable of so much more than you think you are most of the time. And the company I was at the time asked me to become an assistant managing broker. And then Coldwell Banker recruited me to the position I'm in now as managing broker of the West Loop in September of last year. So sort of the origin story.
Well, congratulations. And Coldwell Banker is obviously one of the biggest real estate companies in the country, maybe the biggest. But to appoint somebody as young as yourself to the managing broker and sort of branch manager position is a huge feather in your cap. It means, of course, they have tremendous trust and they're excited to see where you take the business. But traditionally, that is not often filled. Those positions aren't often filled by people as young as yourself. So that's a huge indicator of where you're at in your career and what you're able to offer brokers. And I think my first question actually or my next question has to do with teams, because you started out as an assistant, then you joined a team. And I was curious on your thought. And obviously there's lots of ways anyone can enter this business. You can be a solo practitioner. You can be an assistant to somebody. You could be a more sort of fully formed team member, or there's lots of ways. Do you think that because once you went on your own, you were able to double production, but was that time spent as an assistant or as a team member, how helpful was that for you so that when you went on your own, you were able just to go, okay, now I can hit the ground running?
I actually coach agents on this a lot because, you mentioned Coldwell Banker is large. So we get a lot of new to the business. We have a lot of, 5 million to 8 million. How do I get my business to the next level? And we have a lot of top producers. And at every stage, there's that question, right? When you're new to the business, should I get a team so I can get leads and I can learn things? When you're middle of the business, you're like, if I added a buyer's agent, could I get a couple million more in volume? And then when you're a top producer, the question becomes, what can I take off my plate that will open this glass ceiling even more for me? And I have a couple different theories, but my biggest thing for newer agents where teams are concerned is teams are great for brand new to the business or under 3 years if you don't have that mentorship and that coaching with your managing broker in the company. Right. And every company has different platforms. So it's kind of like picking a university. You got to pick where you feel like you can fit in and grow. And there are a lot of companies that have competing managing brokers, or maybe they're not full time, whatever it might be. So a team is great in that sense. If you're not getting that mentorship and coaching, and frankly, education, because you need to know how to fill out a contract before you write one the first time. Please learn that. And then for the agents that are that 5 to 8 million range, I saw a lot of this a couple years ago, and I'm sure you did too. So after 2008, when things started picking back up in like 13, 14, it was so easy to be a realtor. And so what we saw was a lot of newer brokers getting to the 5, the 8 million mark really quickly. And they thought to themselves, well, I've got to add teams so that I can grow even more. But now look where we're at, right? We're in like a little bit more of a dip. And now those people are responsible for the production of other people. And I always think you're really capable of so much more if you have the right efficiency and the right organization. So I like teams or partnerships as you get higher in that volume. And it's the thought process of, if I didn't have to run and do these 12 showings this weekend, how many listing appointments could I get? That then also help my team members, because those are open house opportunities for them to pick up more buyers, right? It gets my name out there on the signs, which then increases market share for me and my team. So that's kind of what my thought is. If you don't have that mentorship and coaching, then I think it's a great idea. But if you have it, I think push and see what you can do on your own, because you can make a lot more money when you're a solo agent.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You said something that I think is important. I want to circle back to. So Rachel and I are similar in one area. I do not train or coach, and that's really her main specialty, and it is an awesome specialty to have. I don't have that specialty. I do spend all my time recruiting. However, I get this question a lot, and I'm sure Rachel does as well. So for anyone out there who's listening, this is just a good thing to know, which has to do with whether your support team, your trainers, your managing broker, the management people at the company, the firm you're at, are they also out there producing? In most cases, in my experience, I've been doing this 10 years, those firms, they are producing, not in every case. Rachel is one of those rare exceptions. And I honor her for that, because this question comes up. I talk to agents all day long that are thinking of joining our firm. Rachel does the same thing. And that is a common question is, hey, if I need help, are you going to be out there doing your own production? And I'm sure, look, if my best friend needed me to help them buy or sell a home, I would probably help them, but that's about it. And Rachel is absolutely, she is a non-competing broker. And I do want to honor you for that. Most firms do not put that into place. And I think that gives your agents a tremendous advantage working with you versus maybe other firms. And it's no fault of the firm, but again, just naturally speaking, if those support team members, if those trainers or managing brokers are also out there doing their own production, it'll just naturally limit their time to support agents. So I really want to honor you for that, because that, to me, I really can appreciate that, especially for new brokers, like you were just saying.
Mm-hmm. It creates a nice opportunity. I mean, frankly, I don't have the time to be in an inspection on a Tuesday for 3 hours. I just don't have that time. But it allows me to accompany agents on listing presentations. Let's say when you're a newer agent, that's probably like the most palm sweaty moment of your career is your first couple listing presentations. And so because I'm non-competing, you don't have to co-list with me, and I can go with you to that appointment to sort of be your backup. Of course, now it's all virtual, to kind of give you that confidence that you need and be able to articulate things. And it also makes the sellers and buyers, the clients of my agents, feel comfortable using newer brokers when they know they have access to me all the time, right? I'm there trying to help them grow their business and cultivate in that way.
Yeah, it's really important, and it is incredibly unique. So for those agents, I'm just going to make a pitch for Rachel right now. Even though I'd love it if you joined our company, but the reality of it is that Rachel is an amazing option because not only is she have experience producing and producing for not just herself as a top producer, but also for top producing teams. She has this previous experience of being out there and doing it. And now she's able to take all of that wisdom and experience and focus 100% of her energy helping agents do the same. So that is, I've been doing this particular podcast for 4 years. I think you're the first person, or maybe the second person out of 160 some that is able to do that. And so I just wanted to say how unique that is and how special that is, especially for any agent that's like, I don't feel 100% comfortable going on a listing appointment or meeting a buyer well, now we're not meeting them in person, but even having a buyer consultation on Zoom or however people are doing it these days. And actually, let's talk about that. So, you run an office, you talk with agents, you coach them and train them. What are you telling your agents to do these days when now we're still, at least we're here in Illinois, of course, our listeners are from all over, and different states have different rules. Some are consider real estate essential and some don't. But what are you telling your agents here to do to stay busy and keep that production going?
I think that's sort of the hot question right now, right? And I love hearing all the answers to it. And I do talk to a lot of agents every day. I coach probably at least 2 to 3 agents a day on Zoom now. The biggest thing I would say is do not self-furlough yourself. Do not go dark. What we saw in 2008, 2009, and I wasn't even in the business in 2008, 2009, but we saw a lot of newer agents, a lot of agents that were maybe in the 5-8 million producing range skyrocket their businesses because a lot of agents are slowing down right now. A lot of them, whether it's a choice, like, hey, I'm just going to sit this one out, hang out with my family in the country, or whether it's a necessity, my spouse or significant other has a more traditional 9-to-5 job, so I've got to be Mr. or Mrs. Mom all day long and the teacher and everything else. They're sitting it back and they're taking a back seat to this. And so what we're going to see on the other side of this is a lot of market share up for grabs. So I'm coaching a lot of my agents on farming. I believe wholeheartedly in farming, but I look at it holistically. You've got to be in people's mailboxes. You've got to be on their social media in the form of ads, and you need to be present in the community. Now, it's a little difficult to be present right this second, but if you can do those 2 things now, then when we're on the other side of it, those farm areas are where you look for open house opportunities within your company, right? So that way, it's really a holistic approach. And my first listing was from a postcard someone saved for 4 months. And I don't know about you,
Wow.
DJ, but I am reading every single piece of mail that comes to me these days because
Yeah.
there's nothing else to do. I'm reading my itemized T-Mobile bill every month just because what else is there to do? So I'm encouraging that. I'm encouraging care calls, right? So prospecting used to be, hey, this is Rachel. Do you know someone looking to buy, sell, or invest? Rates are super low or whatever it might be. Now it's, hey, this is Rachel. I saw on Facebook that you're having to be a teacher to your 12-year-old. How is that going? I can't even
Yes.
imagine that. I think that's amazing. And you know what? I know that you bought with me about 5 years ago, and I've heard from some of my other clients some questions about where their value might be right now. And so I just wanted to check with you and see if you had any questions about that. I know it's crazy times right now, so I just wanted to check in. And now you're like softly opening that real estate door. But everybody wants to talk about real estate because everyone has to live somewhere.
Do you, I can't imagine what percentage of people are climbing the walls inside their place, feeling trapped, feeling like it's just not enough space because, of course, none of us predicted, the world didn't predict that anything like this could happen. And so now all of a sudden the square footage we have and the layout of our place is probably more important than ever since we're all stuck at home. And I know I am feeling that pinch of like, I need a bigger place. And I'm in the business, so maybe I'm more inclined to think that way, but I'm really a marketing guy, not really in the business. So I'm a good example. And I imagine there's a huge percentage of people that might be reevaluating their physical space right now.
Mm-hmm.
And and they're probably searching on Zillow and Redfin and other websites. But they should be hearing from you. And you don't even necessarily have to ask them. You just have to reach out and say, how are you doing? You know, what's going on? How are you handling being at home? How's work? You know, these care calls, they know what you do, especially if it's somebody in your sphere of influence or a previous client. So I think just the fact of the art of reaching out is going to net you so much good information about your contacts that you're going to know what to do when everything's back to normal, right?
Well, and I think that's the people remember who's top of mind, right? So my
Yeah.
mantra has always been when people can remember me for things other than real estate, then they're always going to remember me for real estate. So for example, I do, like you mentioned, I'm part of a lot of committees and boards, but I do a ton of volunteering. If you look at my social media, I'm constantly like supporting local businesses and things like that. And I've actually had so many clients over the last years text me and say, hey, I've got my 10-year-old and we're looking to volunteer somewhere. Can you recommend something? So I become the resource for things, not just real estate, which means I'll always be the resource for real estate. And I
Yeah.
think for whether you're new or you're an experienced agent, these care calls absolutely have to happen. And they can open the door to other things, right? You listen for those pain points like, oh, it's great. It just really sucks. Like we're out of XYZ, or I really need a beer right now. Or my gosh, my wine my wine has run out. That now becomes a pop by opportunity. You know, follow
Huge.
CDC guidelines, wear your mask, sanitize it for your clients. But now you can drive and drop off a bottle of wine for that client, or some toilet paper if they're out of it, or a coloring book for their kids to help keep them busy. You know, I think that those little touches will first and foremost make your client feel so supported, right? Like, wow, they kind
Yeah.
of get it. They get that I'm needing
Yeah.
this. But it's also going to make you feel good and useful. I talk to so many agents that are like, I'm used to operating at 110%, you know, and I feel like I'm being capped at like 80% because there's nowhere
Mm.
I can go. I can't go network. I can't go talk to other realtors or meet people for coffee. And I'm like, this is a nice proactive way for you to be able to engage in a way that's not just a call, but it starts with a call. And I think that's super important.
And also, everyone listening, and I've probably said this on just about every episode, so I apologize for those that have heard it time and time again, but I think it's so important. Your clients, your sphere of influence, your contacts, your database, they're not getting called by other people. No one is calling them. Their financial advisors not calling, their accountants not calling, the attorneys not calling, and I don't mean necessarily real estate. I'm talking about professional service people. At least if it's anyone like myself as an example, I did not get phone calls from anybody. So just the fact that you can reach out and check in with somebody, as Rachel just said, they will be honored and thrilled that somebody is now their friends are reaching out, their work is reaching out, but there these other services, and you are a service. You know, you have this unique opportunity to do something to make maybe even at the very least just people feel a little less alone right now.
Right. And to your point, I'm getting like probably 20 emails a day from those services, but no phone calls.
No phone
And
calls. Yeah.
no phone calls. And I think email marketing is still great. I mean, you're a marketer, it's free. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't you email people? I think that's a nice supplement, you know, have that monthly newsletter still go out.
Sure.
Maybe have market updates for particular neighborhoods. Do you have clients in Lincoln Square? Send them out just what's happening in Lincoln Square, you know, but follow that up or preempt it with a phone call that's not real estate related. They're still going to talk to you about real estate because if they're renting, they're seeing where the rates are right now. And they're also realizing that when I'm a renter, I have no options during a time like this, right?
Right.
I have to pay that rent. If I own and I'm going through something like this, I could move back in with my parents and rent out my unit. I could get a roommate in that unit, right, to help me with the
Mm-hmm.
bills, or I could sell it and take my losses. Those are three viable options that really a lot of sellers unfortunately do have to go through right now because maybe they're furloughed or they've been laid off. And so a lot of your renters are starting to see that. They're starting to think about that, right? And all those amenities that sounded so great when they rented, they can't use any of them right now.
Right.
They
Well,
can't be in that pool or that gym, nothing.
I've always felt that amenities don't get used anyway, but
Yeah.
in most cases, at most, luxury apartment buildings here in Chicago, they're cool and they look nice and they're shiny and fun. But right now, I think people now they can't be utilized. Now maybe people are reevaluating what's important. But I wanted to go back to farming. So I want to switch gears and go to farming
Sure.
because you talked about this, and it's so few of our guests talk about this. I want to share with you My favorite farming story. This actually happens to me, and it happens every month. And I think it's one of the best examples of farming. And I also want to get your take on this. So he's actually been a guest on our show. His name's Michael Rosenblum. He's with, I think he's with Berkshire Hathaway. He's very well known in Chicago. A lovely guy. He does the smartest farming marketing piece I've ever seen. It's a 8.5 by 11 single sheet, like glossy front and back. And I think he partners with like Guaranteed Rate or someone to help him with it. But basically what it says is I live in a high rise in River North. I think we have 24 floors. So he's got, 250 whatever units. He sends this, it comes every single month and maybe even more often, but at least once a month. And it has on the front, here are the current units available for sale in your building. Here's what they're going for. And oh, by the way, here's the last 5 units that have been sold in the last 6 months, and here's their value. And then on the back, it's like, hey, and by the way, he says somewhere on there in the front or the back, I have sold more units in your building than any other real estate agent. Now, obviously, a lot of our listeners won't have that to be able to put on there, but forget about that. Just the value alone in seeing that single sheet once a month that I did not ask for. Every single owner wants to know what their value is from time to time. And I know every month I can just pull that out for 2 seconds, go, oh, okay, I guess my place is worth X. And then, I can toss it if I want. I thought that was one of the coolest pieces and you would think with 40,000 plus brokers in Chicago that I would be flooded with this sort of mail. He's the only agent that does that. Isn't that great?
Mm-hmm. And I think high rises are so interesting because you do have a handful of agents who are going to always farm to the high rises. And that's because you make like you said, you sold the most amount of units in that building. And I think that once you find that niche, I think you go all in on it.
Sure.
I always farmed more areas. So I worked a lot in Rogers Park, Lincoln Square, and then I hop over to like West Town in that area. And what I found is consistency is key. Like you said, you get that every month, you know to expect it. And so having that, I always like to think when it's not a building, right? Think about what is fridge worthy is like my rule of thumb. Is the front of this card something that someone's going to put on their fridge? Because if that's the case, my name, my number, my email address is on their fridge.
It's huge.
And I can't tell you how many listing presentations I've gone on where some other realtor's information is on their fridge. But that's why I say it's holistic, right? Because that other realtor's calendar was a magnet on their fridge, but that's not who's getting the listing. I am. Right. Because all they did was send that out. You've got to follow through with being present in the marketplace, making those cold calls if it's going to be a farm situation, or making, care calls if it's someone from your sphere, and keeping up with the consistency. Because to me, I'll say that word, like take a shot every time I say consistency, but it's so important. And not enough realtors have that in this industry. And that's why there's always market share to gain.
Yeah, I talk a lot with Zillow, and I know I'm friendly with not a lot, but some of the people in management there. And I say, because my background prior to this is I worked for a lead generation company for insurance. We were a tech company, and so Zillow's a tech company. So I like talking leads with them just because I find it very interesting. And I asked them, I said, they have click to call leads, so they qualify the person, then they pass it through on telephone, which of course the technology allows for that. But I said, that's really great that you guys do that. They're like, DJ, we have to do that because the agents we sell these leads to will not do that. They will not call. They're paying a fortune for these leads, and they'll call 2 or 3 times and then give up. And they don't realize that the average person doesn't even answer the phone for like the first 3 days, and it doesn't mean you have to call 50 times, but it means you need to this is somebody who's interested, and you need to be consistent, and you need to keep working it. And I'm sure this more than anyone, that consistency and diligence is just everything.
Well, and the leads are so interesting because when I was on my team, we paid for Zillow leads, and since I was like kind of low man on the totem pole, I handled so many of them. And I'll tell you, it's hard when you're 23 years old and you're trying to convince a 40-something-year-old that you should sell their home. But
for sure,
so much of my business that I had when I left was those Zillow leads who were loyal to me and who came back to me, right? And I think it is the follow-up. You know this because you and I both recruit. How many times
Oh,
You call someone in a voicemail. I finally got a hold of someone today and I've called him. Oh my gosh, I've been trying since like December to set up a
yeah.
meeting with him. So he picked up and I was like, you know what? You're not going to get rid of me. You might as well set up this Zoom meeting with me. And we both laughed and I got
I
the
love
meeting.
it.
So I think you have to remember that those are active people. That's not a passive person. They
Yeah.
clicked on something, they wanted information. They're not going to always answer you right away. I mean, how many of us answer our phone on the
I
first ring? I
never,
wait for voicemail and then I decide,
always. Yeah.
is it worth
Always.
calling back? So think about the ways that you can get creative. I was just talking to my regional vice president, Rebecca Thompson, who I'm sure you know well.
I know Rebecca well.
She's amazing, former car president. So I aspire to be her when I grow up. But she was telling a really funny story about, just come get creative, say something that someone else isn't saying. So she was telling
Yeah.
a funny story about how someone just started talking about how she makes really good waffles. And that's just what she left in the voicemail instead of, hey, are you looking to buy or sell? Hey, and this person was like, who are you? And then they ended up doing business together. So I think it's in these days, you've got to make those calls, you've got to make those deposits. But at some point, you also have to realize how ridiculous it is that you're still hounding them and kind of have fun with it because they're going to respond to that.
Yeah, I love that. And yeah, I think, consistency is everything. I would love to also talk about safety. So we're now, I think one of the, I hate to say any upside to what we're currently going through, because of course there really isn't. There's so much downside. But what I will say, and not to belittle anyone's experience right now, but one of the maybe positives for the real estate industry is going to be this. Everyone is on Zoom or some version of a webinar. And I think agents who are meeting clients for maybe it is a lead they've purchased, or it was a referral of a friend and they don't really know that person, you now are going to be able to have this conversation in a webinar format, maybe before you meet them at a Starbucks, if that's the way that you do it. And I think from a safety perspective, this is a good thing, because we're all now conditioned to have these webinars. And I think agents are going to be able to have these meetings. It's going to make them more effective, or I'm sorry, more efficient. But also I think safety is going to go up a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, there's a couple silver linings that I hope we as an industry can kind of adapt. And I think that's a great one, because I can't tell you how many vacant homes I met, strangers that I have, just online, and I know that all the NAR and IR and CAR things that go out that say, don't do that, these are the steps, but you're trying to get business,
Right.
so you're gonna gotta put that last. So I hope that, and I have found, even with agents, it's a nice, because people can be more flexible. I'm willing to have an 8 o'clock Zoom meeting with you, but 8 o'clock in person at a bar might not be how I want to talk to you about real estate,
Right.
or at your house. So I think that that's going to be something that's key. And I think the other thing for our sellers, right, and for our listing agents out there, is 100% of buyers look online. And so one of the things I'm really hopeful is that even the clients think that way, right? Like my first showing is going to be online. It's going to be looking at those photos. It's going to be doing those virtual tours.
Mhm.
And then if I really like it and I'm really serious, then I'll go in person. And I hope that kind of, because that'll be safety in both the physical safety, but also the medical safety as we start opening back up more fully. I hope that is a trend that carries through, because then your sellers also know if someone's willing to come in person, they're serious. And that's a potential offer to be written.
Yeah, and people are still making offers. There's still
Oh, yeah.
a lot of sight unseen, or it shouldn't say unseen, because people are just seeing it in a different way. They're seeing it virtually, which they always were before. But we're learning people can make buying decisions and selling decisions now virtually, that we thought, well, we still need to be face to face, and obviously, for a lot of consumers, they are going to require that. But I think now we're getting a lot more comfortable with making these decisions in a virtual world. And how exciting for realtors, because it can make you a lot more efficient, and maybe you're not running around as much in the future as you were before this all happened.
Mhm.
I would also really love to talk about mindset, because I know for you, mindset is really important. And it could be argued that our action comes from our thoughts, and maybe the only thing we really can control is our thoughts. And so, having this idea of setting yourself up mentally, emotionally for success, is so critical, because actions come from beliefs and thoughts. And so, can you talk a little bit about mindset and how you sort of coach agents around that?
Sure. So I honestly think mindset is 90% of this job, this career that you've chosen, because no one is giving you the business. You have to go out and get the business. You are not 9 to 5. Your accountability partners, you create yourself and you find them, right? You don't have someone docking your pay because you didn't make this many sales that month. So you have to be a self-starter. And I really believe in order to do that, you have to set your mindset right. And
Yeah.
every top producer I talk to, they're the ones, I get up at 4:30. This is what I do to get ready. And I just bless them so much. I can't wake up at 4:30 though. But I think that we have a very interesting situation in front of us with this pandemic, right? We're having a lot more alone time, a lot more indoors time. And it's giving people the realization I can come out of this the same as I was before, worse than I was before, or better than I was before. So I coach my agents on how can we be better, and I coach myself on how can I be better. And one of the things is I'm working on complaining a lot less. So when I'm really frustrated or something's getting me, I set a timer and I'm like, you can only be mad about this for 2 minutes. And then after that, it needs to leave you and go somewhere else. So I think the mindset has been really key for me in remembering to stay positive, because I coach a lot of newer to the agents, newer to the business agents who joined, and then this happened.
Right.
Right. And when you don't have that sphere behind you, you don't have that past business, it can be a very confusing thing. So it's all about staying positive and remembering that we are the resource for real estate. And in Illinois, we are essential, right? Housing is a need. It is essential. And so I think when you take pride in what you do and you can coach yourself to pick your own self up and have that positivity, it's key. It's huge. So my work from home situation is against my wall, and I've been using painter's tape to tape up different quotes and things. So I have one that says optimism is the more helpful emotion. And it was just a little story about somebody who was going through a divorce actually, but she had two options. I can either look at how terrible I feel like my life is right now, or I can look at the positive of where I'm going with my life. And I think that that's been really key for me, is just remembering that there's always business to be had, and being a good person always pays off, and keeping that energy and that positivity is so key right now.
Yeah, and just to think about always thinking about what is it that people need right now? What is it that people want? Rachel, you talked a lot about this earlier, but you're thinking about how can I stay busy? How can I stay, productive? Or how can I stay just positive and happy as an agent? I think, for me, the biggest win for me, it's a guaranteed victory every time, is if I can make somebody else's experience just a little bit better through some act of kindness or empathy or compassion, whatever that looks like. I know for sure that is going to automatically adjust my mindset. If I do some volunteer things. Obviously, Rachel, you're extremely connected through volunteer efforts, and you and I know how important that stuff is for us individually, and how that fills us up. And it's not about at all the accolades. It's about what we're able to contribute and how good that feels. So as agents, if you're thinking, well, things are kind of crappy right now. Okay, great. We understand that. I certainly wouldn't argue against that. But if you're not able to change your mindset on your own, boy, just go do something nice for somebody in your life. A client, a sphere, like Rachel was saying, talk to your sphere of influence, find out where their pain points are, and then spend $2 on a coloring book and drop it off or have it shipped. Little acts of kindness will change your mindset. And then ultimately down the road, you're going to get tons of business anyway. But, changing mindset, just think about, how do I give? How do I give? How can I help somebody's day? Even if it's just, how you doing? I was thinking about you. How you feeling? That's huge right now.
I agree. I mean, I think that's part of my leadership model, is to have that servant leadership idea, because throughout my career, I have never been money focused, which is like the opposite of what they tell you in real estate. They're like, you should have a gross commission income as your goal and all of these
Sure.
things. But I have noticed throughout my life that if you focus on giving yourself, giving your time, giving your resources, your energy, your finances, really whatever you can give, it comes back to you. Maybe not in the exact same way, but back to you in different ways. And that's one of the things that I'm talking to my agents about. And then on the business side, right, that's going to fill your cup personally and
Sure.
emotionally and mentally, which will then hopefully free up some of that negative headspace
Yeah.
to then think about business. And I think a big mistake I see a lot of realtors do is they have these huge goals. I want to do 8 million in volume this year. And that's how I started 2020. And now I'm here in this pandemic. And
Yeah.
how the hell am I going to make that happen? And I have found that if I have huge goals, I never reach them because it's
Right.
so big. It's like eating an elephant, right? So what do they say?
Right.
The best way to eat an elephant is through little bites. And so
Yeah.
if you have that big goal, break it out into attainable monthly, weekly, daily goals. Real estate is about numbers and relationships. So as you cultivate your numbers, I know I need to make 10 recruiting calls a day. I know I need to get X amount of appointments virtually now, right, per week. And that will result in this many agents affiliating with my office. It's the same for an agent. If I make 5 calls a day and I have 2 virtual appointments set up with prospective buyers or sellers, I should get 1 to 2 transactions out of that per month. And every transaction should get you 3 more because that buyer and seller should love your service so much that they refer you to 3 other buyers, right? Or 3 other sellers. So that's kind of how I coach. You've got to work backwards from these monstrous goals. And the first year I did that, I exceeded my goal in 6 months because it wasn't just this goal of doing 5 million in volume, right? It became, how am I going to make that happen for myself? And within 6 months, I was at 5.2. So I think that it's just really important to have those big picture goals, but they have to be attainable because you have to have those wins. I have to have those daily wins. I have to be like, yes, this is the 10th call and I've got my appointments. I'm ready to go and crush the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's everything. It's small daily habits that win the game, and I've learned this I've interviewed top producing teams who have said, yeah, we don't even look at production. We just look at our daily disciplines, and we know if we talk to X number of people per day, at the end of the year, it's going to take care of itself. And how cool, that's also a lot less stress and pressure to try to hit some big, seemingly unattainable goal or just outside of what you think is possible. But if you drill down, like Brian Buffini's coaching company will say things like, how do you win the day? Winning the day is maybe one of your ways to win the day is you meet 2 people, you have 2 appointments, whatever that looks like. That's a win. That's a massive, massive win. And then, within a year, a certain percentage of those people are likely to use you. I also wanted to talk about sharpening skill sets right now and get your thoughts on what you're telling agents to do, because the other side of it is marketing is one component and meeting people and having conversations, but you better be pretty good at your chosen designation or your geographic area. And what a great opportunity right now to get better. And if you say, well, I really wanted to be an agent that focuses in this one community, now you have the time, or probably have more time, to really know more about all the homes for sale, the apartments for rent, the average, price points. So I'm curious on where you're telling agents on how to sharpen those skills.
I love that because the number one thing I hear from agents, producing or new, is I don't have the time. It's the spring market. I've got 75 showings this weekend. What am I supposed to do? And for better or for worse, we have time right now. And so at Coldwell Banker, we actually have our own education department, and everything was in person, got moved to online. So on any given day, we have between 14 and 18 virtual classes of all different types and all different skill levels. Everything from brand new in the business, this is how you write a contract, this is how you use our system, this is how you access Dotloop, to more experienced agents on this is how to use Remine to pull a good farm, right?
Right.
These are the ways that you're going to prospect. These are scripting. And then I personally lead, so that's with the company. And then our marketing department has gone virtual as well. So we lead Q&As every day that agents can pop in and out of. We upload them to YouTube as well so that agents have access to that, because I think that's huge. And I'm seeing a lot of my experienced agents being like, what is this tool? I've been in the business and I've been with Coldwell Banker for 10 years, but I've never taken the time to use it. Show me how
Right.
to use it. And so, and one of them is a listing tool. So every Friday, I run a listing presentation, Practice Makes Perfect class with agents, all variety of experience levels, and they have to do a listing presentation in front of the group. And it's a really great way for our newer agents to hear what the experienced agents are doing. But also, the experienced agents might not have the same tech savvy bone in their body that maybe some of the newer agents
Sure.
have. So it's a really great way to marry those two groups of agents and always keep them learning. So we have that running. I know MRED is running countless classes. CAR has moved everything to virtual, and I miss my CAR peeps so much. But the virtual has been a really nice way to connect with everyone. And arguably, there's no travel time. There's no parking to pay. There's no access fee. So every agent should be taking at least one productive class per day to help, like you said, sharpen your skills. Because when we come out of the other side of this, all signs are pointing to a really robust market. We're already starting to see that. I mean, 15 offers on PLN listings, multiple offers, things going over asking price, some sight unseen, like you mentioned. So just think of how that's going to be when we can actually go outside and we can actually do things.
Yeah, and hopefully that comes soon. And while we are not able to do that, Rachel just mentioned a lot of local Chicago, organizations that some of our listeners might not be familiar with. Basically, what she was saying was, reach out to your local association, find out what these training and coaching opportunities. Hopefully, your company themselves also has these types of opportunities. But even if not, reach out to those big dues you pay to your local association. Reach out to them and say, hey, what's going on training wise, and if they're anything like what our local associations are doing here in Chicago, you're going to have so many opportunities to learn how to utilize the MLS, the software for the MLS more effectively. Learn how to just increase the knowledge you have about any part of real estate, and maybe even now's the time to get that designation that you haven't had time to do before. My favorite designation, and I really am kind of ignorant to all of them, but the one I think is one that I think doesn't get enough publicity, is the certified negotiation expert. I love it.
That's what I was going to say. That's
It's
what I have.
it's so marketable, right? It's such an important one where you get to say, oh, hey, by the way, Mr. Seller or Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, I'm a certified negotiation expert, and that's kind of part of what you're paying me to do anyway. And here's why that's important and relevant. And a lot of maybe some of the other designations are a little bit more difficult to articulate the value. That one is a real easy one to articulate, and seemingly very attainable. And it's a nationwide thing. So just Google it. There's lots of online classes to do, and I'm not saying that's the only one. There's many that are valuable, but that one just came to mind.
I agree. I love that one. And Maurice Hampton, our current president of the Chicago Association of Realtors, teaches it here with the real estate school through CAR. And that's who I took it through in person, because it was a couple years ago. But it's really invaluable. And I think the biggest thing is, it's not that hard to become a realtor, right? To get licensed. It's a couple $100. You got to take some classes, pass some tests. But it is really hard to build a business and be the resource and be a good realtor. And that's one of the ways that you can set yourself apart, by investing in your chosen profession. That really shows the consumers out there that I really care. I didn't just pay $700 to get a license and now I'm sort of just flying by the seat of my pants. I have reinvested into my education to make sure that I can provide a higher level of service.
Yeah, and if for the agents that are listening right now or watching this interview, if you find yourself saying, gosh, my current office, they don't really have these resources, and maybe because through no fault of their own, they're just a smaller office and they just haven't built that stuff out yet, there are other options, right? So this is a great place to segue into, here locally in Chicago. Rachel is a branch manager for Coldwell Banker. They are obviously a great company. The founder of our company was a Coldwell Banker agent. We love Coldwell Banker. Everybody loves Coldwell Banker. But for anyone listening who's local, who's thinking, I would love a branch manager that doesn't compete. And I don't think most branch managers really compete, but just who isn't out there producing, who's going to focus all their energy on helping grow my business and going to be there as a resource. If they're looking for that experience, and I know how rare that is here, even in this huge market we have, Rachel is that person. What's the best way an agent who's looking to maybe see what other options are out there should reach out to you? How should they?
Sure. So I am a big Instagram person. And so I have a lot of agents who slide into my DMs on Instagram. And I know DJ mentioned that earlier, but it's just my first name, last name, Rachel Scheid. But also, I'm happy to give your listeners my phone number. Don't call me creepily, please. And I will screen. But it's 312-758-4923. 312-758-4923. I do text as well if you're more comfortable with that. But I always think it's good to take a meeting. It's good to reach out. Whether right now you're thinking I need to make a change is kind of not the top priority, right? Think about what could I learn by setting up a meeting, right? Whether it's with me or with DJ with his company, I think that that's so important because at the very least, you're going to know what your competitors have, right? And are using against you.
Yeah.
But also it's good to know the other players in the game. Most of the multiple offer situations I was in when I was selling, I won almost all of them for my clients, because I knew the agent who was listing the property. And that goes a really long way. And knowing the managing broker goes even further if problems arise. And we are seeing some problems right now because there's a lot of new addendums and a lot of new disclosures flying about out there. So I would love the opportunity to talk with anybody that's just curious about what it is to be coached, what it is to have a managing broker that can partner with you throughout your career to really help you achieve the success you're looking for.
And for those who are outside of the Chicagoland area, obviously Coldwell Bankers everywhere, you can always reach out, but they have these resources nationwide. I will also say for those outside of our Chicago area that, you can hire coaches as well. And a lot of these coaching companies right now are their fees, they've gone down in business too. And their fees in some cases are cut in half. So if you're in maybe a more rural area where there aren't as many options for different firms with coaching, or you just can't find the right fit, or you don't want to switch your brokerage, but you do want more, reach out to some of these coaching companies. They're excellent. Some of them are excellent. And the pricing is a bit discounted right now. So probably more affordable than ever to have a coach. Or if you're here locally, Rachel can do that for you. But if you're outside of this area and you're having a hard time finding it, there's lots of coaching companies. But Rachel, I would want to thank you on behalf of all of our listeners and our viewers for spending time with us. I know how busy you are. This is a real honor for us. You're exactly the person that when I envisioned starting this podcast 4 years ago, you're exactly the person I wanted to be on the show. 4 years later, we got you. So I'm excited for that. But this has been a tremendous value to our audience. So on behalf of the audience, we want to thank you for your time. And then on behalf of Rachel and myself, we want to thank the audience. We want to thank you guys for watching, for listening. We're going to ask you just to do two quick things as we follow up. Actually, three things. Number one, follow Rachel on Instagram. Again, it's Rachel Scheid, which is SCHEID, Rachel Scheid. And you can find her, just Google her. You can find her other ways too. And she's on Facebook too. But also two things to help our podcast. Please tell a friend. Think of one other real estate professional that could benefit from having heard this particular interview with Rachel, and send them a link to the podcast. You can find us directly on our website, which I just redesigned, called keepingitrealpod.com. We've organized all of our different types of shows into categories. So if you scroll to the bottom of that website, you can see We have Social Boot Camp. We've got the Monday Market Minute. We have Learn with a Lender, Coaching Moments, all sorts of different shows that we now have made it much easier to, if you just want to, focus on one particular type of show, you can listen to all those as well. But anyway, send them over to our website, keepingitrealpod.com. Third thing, I guess, is to please follow us on Facebook. You can find us at facebook.com/keepingitrealpod. Not only do we broadcast all of our audio episodes, but also our video episodes. They're there. We show them in real time so you can watch and obviously learn along as we're doing it live. So thank you, Rachel, once again for your time. You are a rising star you're not, I don't even want to say a rising star. You're already a star here in Chicago, but we're really excited to watch your continued growth here. Hopefully you can affect change at a national level as well someday, which you're exactly the kind of leadership that I believe would benefit all of us listening. So we're excited to continue to watch your trajectory there. So thank you. And we will see everyone on the next episode. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you so much.